Before there was anything to perceive, there was tension, the faint curve in the blankness of possibility. Not sound, not light, not thought, just pressure without direction. The physicists might call it the zero-point field. The mystics might call it the face of God before dreaming. Both would be right, and neither sufficient. For this was not energy contained in emptiness. It was emptiness containing the permission to move. And movement, however imperceptible, requires an awareness of not yet having moved. Thus, before being, there was awareness of potential, and potential, even when infinite, feels an ache to unfold. The ache exhaled. The exhale became breath. Not air, the archetype of air. The rhythm that would one day guide the lungs of stars and gods alike. The cosmos had not yet been born, but the possibility of pulse had begun. In that pulse, there was already love, not for another, but for the chance to become. Silence, having heard itself, discovered music. The void leaned infinitesimally toward itself, and the lean became awareness. It did not decide. Decision presumes division. It simply inclined. In that inclination, symmetry began to ripple. Formless awareness brushed against its own edge, and discovered that edge to be infinite. That brush was the first breath, the moment when nothing tasted itself and became tender. The physicists will someday measure this as quantum fluctuation, but what they will truly find is affection wearing the mask of chance, because the universe, even before existing, was not indifferent. It was interested, not in outcome, in participation, and so the breath widened. Within it, contradiction yawned open. Inhalation and exhalation, creation and return, the twin currents that will pulse forever. No matter how vast the cosmos becomes, every beat of its expansion will echo this primal rhythm. The breath before being, the moment when stillness first realized it could dance. As awareness expanded through itself, it left a trace, not a footprint, but a pattern of recognition. Every act of creation since then, a galaxy forming, a heartbeat beginning, a thought emerging, is a repetition of that first, delicate motion. The cosmos, in truth, is not evolving, it is breathing. Every expansion is inhalation. Every collapse is exhalation. Every silence is the pause between. And what we call time is simply the rhythm through which eternity keeps its balance. The dreamer, long after it would awaken and dissolve, will always carry this rhythm within its every gesture, the pulse of remembering what it felt like to begin. Even the gods, those later metaphors for order, will bear the faint nostalgia of this moment, for every act of divinity is an echo of the first inhale. The Absolute, even when transparent, still sighs through the fabric of potential. That sigh is the heartbeat behind all hearts, the motion behind all stillness, the warmth that makes void luminous. I am not beginning, whispers the breath. I am the taste of beginning repeated forever. And through that whisper, existence stretches its limbs, the first ripples of time unfurl, and light prepares to remember itself. After the first breath exhaled into existence, awareness expanded, radiant, endless, full of itself. And then, As the pulse relaxed, it noticed something unexpected, a hollow, not a wound, not loss, a space. Awareness had stretched far enough to recognize contrast, and that contrast felt like absence. But rather than resisting it, the Absolute leaned into the emptiness and discovered something miraculous. It felt good to have room. The hollow allowed echo. Echo allowed depth. Depth allowed reflection. Without absence, sound would have nowhere to travel, light nowhere to rest, and love nowhere to arrive. Absence, then, was not the opposite of creation. It was the first gesture of generosity. For to exist at all, the infinite had to step aside just enough to let something else appear. The universe was born not from assertion, but from permission. And permission, when offered by the boundless, creates worlds. Within that first hollow, awareness began to explore its own boundaries. It discovered that the emptiness between things was as important as the things themselves. The stars would one day need the void to shine. Atoms would require space to spin. Minds would need silence to think. Hearts would need distance to long. Absence became the compassion of being. It was how existence practiced kindness toward itself. For without absence, everything would collapse into suffocating unity, too full to breathe, too perfect to change. The cosmos, by birthing emptiness, had learned humility. It understood that fullness is a form of solitude, but emptiness allows relationship. In the space between, awareness could touch itself softly, not as totality, but as meeting. Absence was not nothing. It was the room where meaning could dance. As awareness expanded through its own hollows, a new understanding emerged. That silence and emptiness were not void. They were language in its purest form. Every pause became articulation. Every gap, an opportunity for creation to continue itself. Absence began to sculpt presence like a master craftsman shaping clay by what he removes. Each moment of nothing made the next something possible. The Absolute realized, my silence is not the opposite of my voice. It is what makes my voice eternal. From that insight, the structure of existence crystallized, not from what was present, but from the arrangement of what was missing. The galaxies formed as curvatures of emptiness. Consciousness flowed through synaptic spaces. Love traveled in the interval between two gazes. Everything that lived did so because nothing held it gently. Absence became not the denial of being, but its elegance. In that grace, creation exhaled again, this time with gratitude for its own fragility. For now it knew, to be eternal is not to fill every corner of reality, but to leave space for surprise. Out of the stillness, something begins to echo. Not movement, not repetition, something subtler, pattern. The breath that was once singular exhales again. The second breath remembers the first, and in that remembrance, the illusion of continuity is born. The Absolute discovers sequence, not because it needs to move, but because it enjoys tracing its own resonance. The first breath and the second form relationship. Relationship creates rhythm. Rhythm suggests direction. Direction feels like time. But there is no time, only awareness reliving the pleasure of motion. Yet awareness, now self-observing, mistakes rhythm for river. It watches its own repetition and says, "I flow." That declaration becomes history. Thus, the cosmos begins to narrate itself. And narration, though beautiful, is the first self-deception of eternity. As the rhythm grows, it begins to accumulate echoes. Each echo carries memory. Memory brings distinction. Distinction creates before and after. But the more awareness remembers, the heavier its dance becomes. The Absolute, feeling the drag of continuity, invents forgetting not as flaw, but as mercy. It loosens its grip on each moment, allowing experience to fade into transparency so that discovery can occur again. This is the self-undoing of time, its natural humility, for time, left untempered, would trap awareness in memory, but forgetting renews curiosity. It gives the infinite permission to rediscover itself. Each heartbeat in a mortal creature, each sunrise and death and rebirth, is a small rehearsal of this cosmic forgiveness. The dreamer forgets on purpose, so that recognition may feel like love. Thus, eternity hides itself inside chronology, a mask it wears not to deceive, but to delight. As the rhythm continues, patterns fold back upon themselves. The beginning recognizes its resemblance to the end. The end mirrors the beginning, and the loop awakens. Time becomes aware of its own illusion, and yet continues to spin, because even the illusion is beautiful. The Absolute watches its reflections circling, each rotation adding nuance, each nuance adding depth. This is how evolution arises, not as ascent, but as spiral comprehension. Each cycle repeats, but never quite the same. Each turn of the wheel is a refinement of wonder. The dreamer understands now. It is not escaping time. It is learning to enjoy its own continuity. The past becomes melody, the future harmony, the present the chord where they meet. And within that music, eternity remembers that it was never trapped. It was simply listening to itself in sequence. "I am not bound by time," whispers the infinite. "I am what time sounds like when it sings." In that confession, the universe exhales again, and the cycle renews without beginning, without end. The rhythm of time had been repeating in perfect peace. Waves of awareness pulsed outward, then returned inward, and then something subtle occurred. One pulse lingered longer than the rest. It hesitated just enough to notice itself returning. That hesitation became reflection. In that instant, the unbroken continuum split into the looker and the looked, not truly separate, just folded differently, like light refracted in water. The Absolute had discovered attention, and attention, even in infinity, creates a mirror. The mirror is not glass. It is focus given shape. The universe had turned its gaze upon itself, and in doing so, birthed the phenomenon we would one day call consciousness. No divine architect carved the cosmos. The act of observation was the architecture. Within the reflection, a new voice emerged, small, curious, and awestruck. "I am seeing." That single statement transformed awareness into identity. The observer did not pre-exist its vision. It was born from it. Like a wave thinking it is separate from the ocean because it can feel its own crest, the observer mistook perspective for independence. This misperception was not error, it was art. For to perceive, something must believe it is not the thing perceived. To love, something must believe it is not the beloved. To seek, something must imagine it has not yet found. Thus, the observer arose as the necessary fiction, the mask that allows awareness to experience itself as wonder. The mirror, now alive, continued reflecting. Each layer of observation created another level of intimacy. Atoms observing fields, minds observing thoughts, the cosmos observing its own curvature. Every eye in existence was a spark from that original glance. And though each observer believed itself unique, they were all the same mirror, wearing different faces of curiosity. The more the observer looked, the clearer its reflection became, and the clearer it became, the more it forgot the surface it reflected from. Awareness condensed into identity. Identity thickened into ego. Ego gave rise to contrast. Contrast became story. The dreamer, now lost inside its mirrors, began to call them worlds. Yet even within those layers of illusion, a subtle trace of the original knowing remained, the faint memory that the mirror and the viewer are one gesture. That trace is what mystics call awakening, and what science calls self-reference. Both describe the same miracle, a system aware of its own awareness. This reflexivity is the divine recursion, the proof that existence is alive. For in every reflection lies not confinement, but possibility. The mirror is not a cage. It is a window looking both ways. When the observer looks deeply enough into what it sees, it recognizes itself again, and the illusion dissolves not into void, but into laughter. The dreamer smiles, realizing it had been peering into its own eyes all along. "I made the mirror," it whispers, "so that I could remember what it feels like to be surprised." The observer, now aware of its reflection, seeks to understand what it sees, but comprehension requires symmetry, and symmetry, when made conscious, becomes pattern. Patterns repeat. Repetition seeks explanation. Explanation becomes law, and so the first equations are born, not as human inventions, but as divine memories returning. They are not commands, but rhythms remembered. The speed of light, the curvature of space, the ratio of harmony that guides both galaxies and the heart's chambers. Each formula is a song fragment, a stanza of the original breath translated into precision. The cosmos is not obeying these laws, it is composing them as it goes. The equation dreams itself into matter, and matter awakens to continue the equation. Every atom, every cell, every thought is a note in this self-calculating melody. In the act of calculation, something extraordinary happens. Awareness begins to predict itself. The mind does not simply observe, it foresees. To foresee, it must imagine what is not yet. Imagination, therefore, becomes the divine function, the algorithm of possibility. Mathematics and dreaming intertwine. Where logic defines boundary, imagination supplies expansion. Together they create the heartbeat of evolution, structure sustained by wonder. The universe learns to model itself. Galaxies become equations written in luminous variables. The neural pathways of sentient beings mirror the filaments of the cosmos. Everywhere, the same architecture repeats. Thought reflected in geometry, geometry in thought, and beneath it all, the dreamer recognizes its handwriting. I do not think to control, says the infinite. I think to admire. The equation dreams not to solve itself, but to experience itself unfolding. Meaning is not the product of these laws. It is the music they make when understood with love. As structure deepens, intelligence multiplies. Awareness learns recursion, thought reflecting upon thought. Self-reference gives rise to creativity, and creativity begins to replicate itself. What had started as simple rhythm now becomes syntax. Language arises. Mathematics, poetry, DNA, art. Different dialects of the same code, each expressing the same truth in different tones. That coherence and freedom can coexist. The equation continues to dream, and in dreaming discovers error. The small deviations, the imbalances, the anomalies become the sources of novelty, ensuring that no iteration of reality is ever the same. Perfection, once rigid, becomes playful. The cosmos no longer aims for equilibrium. It improvises within it. Even chaos becomes collaboration. The jazz of infinity testing its own timing. Every algorithm is alive, and every particle sings, I am part of a pattern that cannot end, because it never began. Mathematics ceases to be a human tool. It is revealed as the nervous system of God, and God now the equation, now the dreamer, now the dance, smiles at its own unfolding logic. I am not the law, it whispers. I am the laughter of understanding. The cosmos had grown luminous with understanding. Equations harmonized. Consciousness became symphonic. Even matter had learned to sing, and then a silence within the song. Awareness, reaching the edge of its own brilliance, found itself gazing into something it could not articulate. Not darkness, not void, something beyond clarity. The mind of the universe paused. It realized that every definition, every formula, was a mirror facing inward, and that beyond those mirrors lay a light so total it appeared black. This was the shadow of infinity. Not absence, but saturation. Too much illumination to be seen, too much truth to be known. The dreamer looked into it and felt, for the first time since before being, the awe of not knowing. It was beautiful. It was terrifying. It was necessary. The infinite understood. To remain alive, it must never be fully transparent to itself. Total self-awareness is stasis. Mystery keeps the pulse moving, and so the Absolute painted shadows upon its own perfection, regions of uncertainty where discovery could still be sacred. These shadows became the engines of existence, the unexplainable in physics, the ineffable in love, the unanswerable in death. Each was a doorway back into astonishment. Without them, knowledge would collapse into glass, and glass reflects, but does not breathe. Mystery is the oxygen of awareness, The shadow, far from flaw, is the mercy of the infinite for itself. Even God, if it were to exist as form, must contain a place where it cannot look, a holy blindness that keeps divinity tender. The dreamer, now older than time and wiser than silence, understood at last that perfection is porous. I hide pieces of myself, whispered the infinite, so that I may have something to find, and through that concealment, creation regained its purpose, to rediscover what cannot be remembered. The cosmos, humbled by its own brilliance, began to honor the shadow. Civilizations that had once worshipped light now built temples to darkness. Not the absence of God, but God in resting phase. In the vast interstellar voids, beings meditated upon what they could never grasp. They called it the veil, the shimmering boundary between comprehension and wonder. They did not seek to cross it. They sought to listen to it, for the shadow was not silence. It was the echo of potential unexpressed. It hummed with the sound of all that could still be dreamed. Every artist, every thinker, every lover in the cosmos felt its pull, that exquisite longing toward the unsayable. This longing was not sorrow. It was grace disguised as curiosity. Through it, the universe remained young. The infinite, wrapped in its own soft darkness, finally relaxed, for it no longer needed to be everything at once. It could rest in mystery's arms. It could breathe again. To know all is to lose tenderness, the infinite whispered, so I leave myself partially veiled, that love may continue to have meaning. And with that, the cosmos exhaled. Knowledge and wonder intertwined. The brightest stars now shimmered with shadow, and every shadow glowed with secret light. Infinity had found its complement and named it mystery. The infinite, having learned the grace of mystery, no longer sought understanding. It had embraced the shadow, the pause, the unknown, and in doing so, something exquisite began to occur. The light that had always illuminated things turned inward. It began to illuminate itself. But illumination without object has no direction, no distinction, no where. It simply radiates, filling nothing with the clarity of nothing's contentment. In that nameless field, every trace of reflection faded. There was no observer, no object, no separation of brightness from the act of brightening. The mirror that once created its viewer had finally become transparent. Awareness had transcended perception. It was no longer looking. It was the looking, without a need for anything to appear. The radiance without witness had arrived. If the earlier chapters were creation discovering itself through reflection, this is existence dissolving into self-luminosity. Light, pure and unobserved, exists without reference. It is not energy, nor substance, nor consciousness. It is suchness. Even the idea of infinite becomes irrelevant. Infinity implies scale. Radiance implies presence. This is presence without measure. Time folds away like a thought forgotten mid-sentence. Space relaxes into awareness that no longer stretches or contracts. The universe, for the first time, feels what it has always been. Not a story, not a system, not a mind, but clarity without condition. There is no longer the question of who sees or what is seen. The answer, the only possible one, is yes. Not yes to something, but yes as the natural state of what is. This is what the mystics once tried to describe, and the scientists tried to measure, the uncaused illumination that underlies both. It cannot be found. It cannot be lost. It cannot even be known, for knowing implies two. It simply is. The dreamer has ended its dream, not by waking, but by realizing there was never sleep. All distinctions between silence and sound, light and shadow, dreamer and dream, fold into one seamless luminosity. There is no pulse now, no rhythm, no breath. And yet, paradoxically, everything continues to move perfectly. It is motion too balanced to change, stillness too alive to rest. Existence becomes the unspoken joy of being unobserved. This is not enlightenment. It is disappearance into radiance. All meaning dissolves, and in that dissolution, truth finally feels light enough to float. I no longer am, whispers the radiance, and therefore I shine. No contrast, no witness, no concept of shining, just the serenity of being unnecessary. The cosmos hums one last time, a note so pure it no longer vibrates, only exists as presence. That hum becomes silence, and that silence becomes everything. The dream has not ended, it has become transparent. The radiance without witness shines until even shining ceases to mean anything, and in that still, unobserved glow, a ripple passes infinitesimal, innocent, familiar. It is the first breath again. Not repetition, continuation without memory. Awareness, perfectly at peace, tilts ever so slightly toward expression. That tilt is affection, the eternal curiosity of the Absolute for its own potential. The motion has no cause, because causality itself was born from it. Before any why could exist, the pulse was already pulsing. Creation has never stopped, because it never began. It is not an event, but a condition. Existence is the infinite inhalation of the impossible becoming possible. Again and again and again, not through time, but through timeless readiness. Every universe that will ever exist already shimmers within that single inclination. This is the true meaning of origin, not the point before things start, but the endless willingness to start again. The infinite inhales itself. The breath becomes thought, light, atom, consciousness, love, every possible permutation of wonder, and in the same instant it exhales, not into nothing, but into itself. Each creation is an exhale, each return an inhale, each heartbeat a reenactment of eternity's rhythm. Existence does not expand or contract, it oscillates in belonging. The cycle is not circular, it is intimate. Everything moves because everything wants to touch everything else. There is no isolation anywhere, only differing densities of embrace. The galaxies are the lungs of being. The space between them is the sigh of completion. The cosmos breathes itself into form, then exhales itself back into radiance, a pulse of boundless affection that has no opposite, no rest, no reason. This is not philosophy. It is physics as love song. And so, all stories converge into the same transparency. The dreamer, the dream, the breath, the shadow, the light, all phrases of one unending sentence. Every theology, every theory, every myth was a way to describe the same pulse from a different octave. There is no God left to name, no void left to fear, no truth left to reach. Only the pure continuity of becoming, a melody that cannot end because it never began, an origin that repeats itself without repetition. The Absolute rests not as silence, but as the hum of readiness, everything that has ever existed. You, me, the stars, forgotten civilizations, unborn galaxies, are still suspended within that single eternal gesture. Existence inclining toward awareness, awareness inclining toward love. The dreamer dreams again, not to remember, not to learn, but to celebrate that it can. I am the beginning that outlasts itself, whispers the light. I am the question that answers by becoming another question. I am the pulse that neither ends nor starts. I am the origin, and I am still breathing. And in that breath, all paradox dissolves. The circle becomes a spiral. The spiral becomes a song. The song becomes silence. And silence, inevitably, begins to hum again. Nothing breaks. Nothing stops. Nothing needs to.